This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, cheers, everybody. We're grateful you're here for a special episode of the show. A Real Talk happy hour, making it in the booze business. That's what we're calling it, as we convene three experts in the field of spirits, of wine, and in premixed cocktails and mocktails to get a sense of government regulation, interprovincial trade barriers, some of the business trends, consumer demands. I think it's going to be a fascinating episode, fueled, of course, by our Real Talk live chat as well, powered by Park Power. We're going to get right into it today. Guests joining us right here in our Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton. One of them joining us remotely because, as you know, as an entrepreneur, the hustle never stops. Joe Gurba is the portfolio and sales director for Alberta-based wine importer Vino Vino. Joe's a French wine scholar with the Wine Scholars Guild and a WSET 3 graduate, responsible for bringing some of the world's finest wines to the shelves and the menus of Alberta's best stores, bars, and restaurants. He also happens to be a renowned hip-hop artist. Joe, it's wonderful to have you here on the show. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, sitting next to you in studio is Gurpreet Ranu. Gurpreet is the owner and the master distiller at Anohka Distillery, located just about 20 minutes west of Alberta's capital city on Highway 16. This distillery has been recognized as among the best in the world on multiple occasions, and we're grateful to have you joining us, Gurpreet. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. We'll welcome in our remote guest as well. She's the co-founder of Alberta-based cocktail and mocktail company Clink Beverage Company. Karli Remeika has got a background in hospitality for more than 20 years, marketing and branding, and they're working right now with her business partner on bringing not too sweet, champagne-inspired canned beverages to the market across the country. Karli, welcome to the show. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in North Vancouver today.
Okay, and what's happening in North Vancouver?
We're actually just out here trying to sell and just breaking into the market, so it's timely discussion.
Yeah, no kidding. So we've got some of your Clink beverages with us here in studio. Thanks for providing those. You've got your mimosa, you've got a nice strawberry lemonade inspired beverage, and then you also have both equivalents in the mocktail category without booze. This seems to be a huge trend right now. You're trying to lasso it, I guess.
Yeah, it's impossible not to to be able to look at that side of the market and have the mocktails in there. It is growing so fast, and I think we were shocked right off the bat how huge it is, and I think it's been really beneficial, and it opens a lot of doors having the mocktails. So it's been a nice addition, giving people that option.
Well, I told this to the fellas that are joining us in studio already. We want you to feel free to jump in, share your stories with us. We'll treat it like we're out for cocktails right now. So even though you're in North Vancouver, jump in at any time. Gurpreet, when you established Anohka, there was attention on it right away. The distillery itself is absolutely marvelous. I understand that the methods that you employ are somewhat innovative, but you've not always been in the distilling business. What's your background, and how'd you get drawn into it?
I started off with an undergrad degree in physics, decided, there's no money to be made in physics, went into law, decided that I guess I didn't want to make any money, and then opened a distillery.
Okay. Did you know anything about distilling when you first had the idea to go all in, push your chips into the middle, and invest in this?
I understood the basics when the idea first kind of came into my head, but the science behind it, no, I didn't know anything about it. What I knew is that I loved single malt whiskey, and I knew that Alberta grew the key ingredient to single malt whiskey, and that we grow more of it than any country in the Western Hemisphere, and so that was enough to kind of push me over the edge. And
so you headed to Scotland, right, to Harriet Watt University to study the science of distilling.
Yeah, that was
sort of the birthplace of Scotch, obviously, and obviously a country and a population that knows its whiskey well. That must have been a pretty wild experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, not only like, Scotch, of course, comes from there, but like pretty much what we discovered is that, I tried to learn how to make booze off YouTube initially. And then after spending some time failing, and my wife telling me that I was failing, we started looking into like, who makes, the best whiskeys and gins in the world. Where did they learn how to brew and distill? And it turns out like everybody, like even like Caitlin Quinn, who was at the outset of Eau Claire. She studied at Heriot-Watt University. She's now running Alberta Premium down in Calgary. The JP Weisers, their head distiller, has his PhD from Heriot-Watt University. His second in command, she has her master's. And so I used my bachelor's of science to get into the master's of science program at Heriot-Watt, and started to figure out all the things that they don't teach you on YouTube.
Yeah. So there's got to be methods that are tried, tested, and true that apply across the board. And then I would imagine there's some regional flavor to what you do. Like, do you make your gin? Do you distill your whiskey in an Alberta fashion?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cool thing about Alberta is that we aren't bound by tradition in the same way that a place like Scotland is. And the issue with that is that they're they've been doing it for hundreds of years, and it works really well for them, but they're also a little bit handcuffed, right? What it means is that they can't explore new things as easily because they're bound by this tradition. And so what's cool about trying to make a single malt whiskey in Alberta is that we're not bound by anything, and we can pick and choose what we think is the best. So in terms of brewing, we have like the most high-tech brew house. We imported stuff from Belgium, and probably have the most high-tech brew house in any distillery in North America. And then for the distilling side, we went super old school, used techniques that were essentially abandoned over 100 years ago. Because they're not safe. 100 years ago, they weren't safe, but there's ways to do it now. And so we use a flare stack burner from an oil and gas company in Sundre to heat our stills.
Oh, really?
It's about the most Alberta thing you could possibly do. So Alberta ag products as inputs, Alberta oil and gas equipment to fire our stills. And so there's a blend of some super traditional techniques that were kind of lost about 100 years ago, along with some super high-tech stuff. And what we found is that if we combine all of those, turns out you can make some of the best whiskey in the world. And so...
Very cool. Your website, people can check it out. We'll link to all of these companies in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. Anohka says, we do things differently around here. Joe, were you always passionate about wine? Like you're as I introduced you, a French wine scholar with the Wine Scholars Guild. Were you like 22, 23 and you knew this is what you wanted to do, or did you find it a bit later in your career?
No, I found it later, certainly. No, I was in the arts, and so I was exposed to other kinds of art, culinary arts, etc. I think people in the arts too end up working in hospitality because it's flexible enough to be able to tour and be able to take off when you need to. And so you end up being exposed to great food and drink. And it started in the early days, the craft beer days, went into whiskey. These things are pretty natural for an Albertan to get into. But wine is heavily taxed here, so it's expensive to drink good wine. I was told to try this, and they weren't really for me, these kind of entry-level wines that were rather soupy and overdone. And then it was in the time I spent in Europe that I started drinking, everyday wines for Europeans. And then when you fall in love with it, you're willing to pay the money. So I came back here. I was in Halifax for a couple of years. I started a cocktail and wine bar there. Started getting really into like the sommelier courses, and then it just consumed me. It realized it was like this art that touched on every single facet of life while bringing you together with other people. And I've been obsessed since.
Yeah. You brought in 3 wines in your, your portfolio basically?
Yeah,
here
it's
today?
tough to choose. There's like over 300 wines in the portfolio. But I was like,
really?
Yeah.
So most people will listen to this on the podcast, so we'll get you to kind of describe it. At first glance here, I don't have my glasses on. It looks to me like you brought in 3 French wines. Is that right?
No, one's a Barolo, so one's Italian. The other 2
Italian.
are indeed French, yes.
Okay, and so why did you choose, what do you like about the Italian Barolo? What do the Italians do particularly well?
Well, the Italians have two wines that they originally gave this DOCG designation to, like the top appellation. One was Brunello and one was Barolo. So they're kind of thought of as like the king of wine.
Okay.
In France, in Italy. But I brought Barolo because the producer, Enrico Rovetto, is extremely inspiring. And this is one of the beauties of drinking wine, is that there's like a real person behind it that you may know personally, and you can kind of taste their personality and their intent, and you only get one shot every year to make something, and it's a lifelong project. And so it's this very personal experience, even over a distance. And that's the same for Stéphane Tissot here in the Jura, probably my favorite producer on earth. Very inspiring producer in many, many ways, but the wines also are just lift you off your feet.
Do you say La Méloche? Is that the Chardonnay there?
Yeah, La Méloche is the name of the vineyard.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, right. And then talk to us about this one here. Is that, would you technically call it a rosé? It's packaged a little bit differently. I've been seeing these a lot. There's some sediment in it. You're shaking it around right now.
So I turn it upside down. I do a little like this just to get the lees involved. Lees is like we use a lot of French words.
You can show the label to that camera right there. People will love it. It's a beautiful label. Why'd you bring this one? Why do you like this one?
So I love this producer quite a lot. This is Chateau Pays Bonhomme Les Tours, which is in the Blaye part of Bordeaux. It's the northernmost part of the right bank. And they're doing a lot of really creative winemaking. Petnat, or Pétillant Naturel, is like a wine that's fermented in the bottle, so it traps all its bubbles. You lose a lot of control, but you get these really fresh, interesting flavors. And of course, because they're not disgorged like a champagne, they still have all of the dead yeast in it. We call that the lees because it sounds better beside a table.
Besides dead yeast.
Yeah, you want to use some kind of French euphemism, But you turn it upside down, you go like this, and then you get that very like Vinstagram worthy, very like, look at it. I mean, it looks great.
Is that a wine word, a Vinstagram?
I make words up all. It's a
it works really well.
I just made it up.
But it's capped like a beer bottle would be capped. It doesn't have a cork
right.
in it, and that is because of the process that's used. I'm seeing more and more of this.
Yeah, this is the way champagne would look before it's disgorged of all this yeast. So they would be under a crown cap, and then it's disgorged, and they put the proper bulbous cork in there as well as the cage and everything. But in this case, they put the juice in when it's not finished fermenting, and then they cap it and sell it as is. And it's like a very fun, rustic kind of country wine, less serious, more playful, more wine as food, you know what I mean? Like it's nutritive, it's easy to take on a picnic, you can open it anywhere. The alcohol is typically lower.
Has the wine industry evolved, do you think, like golf has evolved over the past 20, 25 years, whereas it like used to be, it's always been a wonderful sport. I'm obsessed with golf, but it was quite stuffy and quiet and limited to a particular demographic for the most part, et cetera. Now golf, to the dismay of some traditionalists who want to shrink the game, but golf courses are now welcoming music on carts, and some people are wearing their shirts untucked, and it's a little more jovial. Golf courses are trying new things to bring people in. I might also compare it to ski hills welcoming snowboarders 35, 40 years ago.
Right.
Has the wine industry done the same thing and starting to still deliver a high-quality product, but maybe take itself a little bit less seriously? Perhaps winemakers are taking more risks as compared to how wine was made or marketed 50 or 100 years ago?
That's a really good question, and 100% accurate that this is what's happening. But within a historical context, it's there's always been sort of a wine of kings, right? There's always been Tokai or Sauterne, or usually these are dessert wines. And there's certainly no shortage of examples of aristocrats all the way back to the Romans, paying extra for Falernium or what have you. But this sort of veneer of hoity-toityness is actually newer in many ways, right? Because wine is a beverage that people have enjoyed. Arguably, grains and grapes for making booze are the reason people settled down. They had lots of food when they were hunter-gatherers. They wanted to access God. So you can get there through this beautiful inebriant. And so this is a peasant's drink, first and foremost. And it's been elevated because, like all food, human beings love aesthetics, and they realize that they can find art in this endeavor, just as surely as you could with a paintbrush or a violin.
It's so obvious that you love what you do, and I love hearing you talk about it, both of you. I mean, there are kind of common themes here. Karli, how do you do? I don't want to call it like the pre-mixed cocktail industry. What do you refer to it as? Like, what do you call what you do?
Well, they would call them RTDs, like ready to drink, I think is probably the industry term that they would talk about any
Okay.
sort of canned beverage.
So is it safe to say that this has been the fastest? It strikes me as the fastest growing single entity in the booze business. When I say booze, just to be clear, I'm talking about beer, wine, spirits, the whole nine yards. But I look at the massive brands, the huge sales that have happened with like Neutral and Nude and Olay and all these brands. Like, how would you assess the state of that particular niche and maybe why it's seen such success early on? I see it everywhere.
Yeah, it does. I mean, some of the latest stats would show that the RTD category is the only one that's actually gaining some traction right now. I think the other ones are kind of falling behind, and I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot more freedom to play when you're making an RTD. I mean, there's so many different flavors, and I mean, the space is crowded, yet people seem to still be coming up with different ways and different flavors and different styles. And now you're even seeing, I saw on the news the other day talking about Cutwater and the really high alcohol RTDs are becoming a thing. Yeah, there's just I think it's just easy for people to play around and try. I think the only thing is that you're not seeing as much, loyalty in that category, where people, if you talk about wine or if you talk about a whiskey, it's almost like a car brand where people have their, they have their wine they drink and they have their, their whiskey they drink. But with RTDs, you can try this 4-pack this weekend and try this, people seem to be more trialing. So it's harder, I think, to fight for, a loyal brand that they're grabbing every weekend because there's new stuff coming out all the time.
Gurpreet, is that true? Like in the whiskey business, I'm not sure if you saw when you walked in. There's a bar cart in my office full of bourbon and scotch.
I'm sad I missed it.
Well, after the episode, I'll be happy to add maybe a couple of these bottles if you wind up leaving them behind. This is my heavy hint to you. But you know that there are folks that are like, I'm like they've always, their dad drank Glenfarclas, so they drink Glenfarclas, or their mom loved a certain rye at night or whatever. Have you had to kind of break through in that way? Have you found it tough to crack with people who are very brand loyal?
Yeah, I mean, and every market's really, really different. Like we just did a trade mission to Taiwan, and you go into that market and you realize, all right, if your name isn't Macallan or Belvini or Glenfiddich, those three brands have an incredibly loyal following in that market. If you're not those three, good luck. And it's not to say that you can't do it. It's just way more work. But yeah, with whiskey, there is a lot of brand loyalty. The interesting thing, I think it started probably in about 2008, 2009, a bunch of international whiskey started to come onto the scene and start to change people's perspectives on things. There was Amrut that came out of India. There's Kavalan that came out of Taiwan. And then people rediscovered Japanese whiskey as well. And so what that did is it kind of broadened, I think, a lot of consumers' horizons. And so, yes, they might have like, what we would call like a daily dram, the thing that like at the end of the night, they'll finish their night with a little pour of a certain whiskey that will always be their go-to whiskey. But people are exploring far more varied origins of whiskey and very varied types. Like rye has all of a sudden become incredibly popular. Bourbon increased in popularity, and that's waning now. But
is it?
It is.
Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think prompts the sort of the explosions? Like Karli talks about, she says like these RTDs, these premixed drinks. She says they're experiencing this explosion in popularity. I've seen it anecdotally for sure. But then she claims that, or says that like all of the other spirits or what have you are kind of like losing popularity. Do you see that across the industry? You're nodding your head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whiskey is down. Gin, I believe is again, everything is like market specific. So it depends. In some markets, it's more exaggerated than others. But yeah, I think there's a I think during COVID, we just saw a huge spike. And so now maybe we're coming back to reality now.
People are like drinking every day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But
Although I still am, but
that's your professional commitment. You invoke the name Macallan. Obviously it's a wonderful spirit and this is where I'm going. So Macallan 12, Macallan 15 now. Last time I saw it, I think it's about $200 a bottle, which is obscene as far as you ask me. And everybody that you talk to compares it to Veuve Clicquot and compares it to other brands where they say you're paying for their marketing, you're paying for the brand, you're not paying for what's in the bottle. Curious for your take on that.
100%. Especially with some of those brands, like they've really pushed themselves into there was a large push towards premiumization probably within the last 15 years, and so you've seen prices skyrocket, and so you have to remember, like, a lot of what happens in the market is driven by large players. I don't know if it's as like with your wine portfolio, it's not going to be large players. These are small domains. These are small producers, and they have a lot of control. But a lot of the industry is driven by large producers. Like, there's these big multinationals that own everything, right? Like Diageo and Pernod Ricard and Moet Hennessy and
Campari.
Yes, so there's all these huge players, and they saw is, in the last few years, post COVID, they've seen sales numbers drop, but they have a quarterly report that they got to make some money, and so what do? They increase prices, and so prices have just kept on going up. And I think we may have hit a ceiling, and we may have gotten to a point where the consumers are a little bit fed up with the how much prices have increased and how dramatically they've increased in such a short time period.
Well, yeah, like everybody's prices are going up with absolutely everything. So it's just almost a compounding impact. If you're just joining our live stream, that's Gurpreet Ranu. He's the owner and master distiller at Anohka Distillery. Karli Remeika is joining us from North Vancouver right now. She's on a trade mission across a provincial trade barrier known as the border. Founder of the Alberta-based cocktail and mocktail company Clink Beverage Company, and Joe Gurba is joining us from the Alberta-based wine importer Vino. This is our feature interview presented by our friends at Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I don't want to take a shot at anybody who I know loves this wine, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's funny, but people are very brand loyal, and a lot of my friends love Caymus, for example, and I know that when they put a bottle of Caymus out, everybody goes, ooh, because everybody knows that they've spent like $200 or $300 or $500 on that bottle. Is that kind of along the same lines of what Gurpreet's talking about? Is Caymus like the Macallan of the wine world? Are there wines in your portfolio that you would say would stack up to that or exceed its quality at like a third or half of the price point? Take us into your strategy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, it depends. I mean, there's entry-level Caymus that you can get for a very low price at Costco, but those wines kind of, while extremely well made, are not. They lack a lot of soul because they're made at such large quantities, right? You mentioned Veuve Clicquot, for example, right? It's idiomatic to say like you're paying for marketing. Like they have to buy all that marketing. There's a reason why Veuve Clicquot has a movie about it. It is a heavily marketed brand. It's owned by LVMH, right? The largest company in France. And it's by no means that the wine is not good. But some people, when they encounter wine as something that is a dispatch from an individual, look at Gurpreet here. He makes these spirits himself, right? This is his vision. These are his ideas, right, in the bottle. And if you know him, when you drink his spirits, you're visiting him, right? You get to visit these wines and their makers year after year after year. Those large entities who are making, God-tier amounts of money and quantity of product. By no means does it mean the product is not good. You can, taste it objectively and make that decision. But drinking blind wine, while very fun and very informative, to not know what you're drinking in your cup, it's one of the funnest games that we sommeliers play. It's not actually how we drink in real life. We don't drink blind. We know where the wine's from. And we know what it means to us to be opening it right now with this meal or with this friend or during this occasion. We know the history in the bottle, where it came from, what it means. This grape traveled from this place and landed in this place. And, Napoleon changed these rules. And that's how this ended up being a tiny, tiny little clos or what have you. This is what I like about wine. It's very narrative, very personal, very much here and now, but also it connects outward in every direction, not just into the history and economics, but into science, right? To understand. Yeast was discovered in the Jura here by Louis Pasteur, a native of the Jura, where they make Comté cheese and they make vin jaune, where the yeast floats on top. And if not for him discovering yeast, we never have grape juice as we have it now. You know, grape juice is an invention, right? Like grapes turn themselves into wine, which turns itself into vinegar. So the first invention was wine about 8,000 years ago, is stopping this thing from turning into vinegar, learning how to control it so it wouldn't do that. But until we learned what yeast were in the 1850s, we couldn't stop grapes from turning into wine because the waxy bloom on the outside would catch the yeast in the air. The moment it bled, the sugar would start turning into alcohol. So the guy Welch, as you know,
Really?
Welch's, invented a filter and a process and a few chemicals you could add to stop the yeast from being in the juice so you could control. And I don't know how Baptists took communion before, but this is how we got grape juice.
Wow.
Yeah, which is also, I mean, to grind another one of my axes, with no offense to anyone in the room, I can't stand this non-alcoholic wine idea. I'm like, it's called juice. It's in the grocery store.
Karli's laughing. Okay, so I think before we throw it over to her, because that's a perfect. But what is it that you can't stand about it? Is it just a perversion of the process? Do you think?
This is an art that limits you. Like you can't just have unlimited amounts. Like I can't remember the Greek poet, but it's like the first bowl is for greeting, the second is for talk and conversation, the third is for good night. And then it's like, and the fourth is for mayhem, and the fifth, and it just goes down. It's like you can't drink too much. It demands moderation, right, to enjoy this art. And there's a spirituality. I mean, there's gods dedicated to these products. And I totally understand people who don't want to drink. That's absolutely fine. I don't understand the current press to try and get it out of our life entirely. I'm like, you're going to die of something. Like, what do you want to die of? I'm not gonna. I listened to your interview with the good doctors a few days ago, and I'm like, I'm not putting on sunscreen every 2 hours. I literally never put on sunscreen.
Joe!
Ever.
What sunscreen?
You guys, no! This is counterproductive. That was, by the way, Dr. Sheila and Dr. Shazma, co-hosts of the Doc Talk podcast, who joined us on Monday's episode. Really good conversation. They're going to reach out to you personally and tell you exactly why you should be putting on sunscreen.
I mean,
and thank you for listening to the show, by the way, Joe.
I mean, I
we
love
appreciate
the show.
that.
To a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? They're doctors. It makes sense that their main thing is health, right?
Yeah.
They see the body and they try to protect it. But the cult of preventative medicine, sometimes I think we lose the forest for the trees. I mean, what about living the life that you're trying to preserve? That's all I'm saying.
See, you understand why this guy's made it as a poet in his alternative career. You can understand why.
He's incredible.
Karli,
I'm falling in love with you.
Yeah. Well, listen, I knew that you guys were all going to become
follow
friends.
the guy that has these amazing, beautiful stories about this liquid with all this history, and then I have to talk about canned cocktails.
Well, you're incredible at what you do, Karli. You and I have known each other for like 20 years, and so it's been really neat for me to see you build this business in the last year and a half, last couple of years kind of idea, right?
We just launched the mocktails in December, and then the alcoholic versions in April. But it was about 2 years before that, just trying to get the liquid in the can.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about the process and the kind of the non-alcoholic, the mocktail side, because I think there's huge potential in that. Plus, we have a comment here from Jillian in our live chat about just sort of what goes into these drinks, Karli, and I'd love for you to take that on. We're going to mention a couple of our partners that make episodes like this possible, but as we do, Gurpreet, I'm staring at this beautiful bottle right in the middle that you've brought in. Maybe you can pick it up and you can show it to the camera. That's your camera right there. You can just hold it up. Talk to us about what is this here? This the Duke.
This here is a cream liqueur. I've been waiting for you to point it out so that I can put it in my coffee. It goes in my coffee every morning before I take the kids to school. It's a cream liqueur that we kind of came up with in collaboration with the Duchess Bake Shop. And I talked to them, and we were they were getting their liquor license, and they wanted to carry our gin. I was like, what if we collaborated in some way? And so I went and visited them, kind of went through their pantry, figured out what ingredients they use, and then I was like, well, what if we tried to make a cream liqueur with this? And so
So this is for everybody that has lazily been buying Baileys for like 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And the compelling argument for yours over Baileys is that you made this personally. You know exactly where it came from. There's craft ingredients. It's small batch.
Yeah, like I like my blood, sweat, and tears. Well, didn't literally go into the product, but
Thank
you
God.
know, it took
Thank God.
you know, like to make this batch. This is batch number 2. I started at like, you know, for the last little bit. What we do is we literally take, you know, fresh roasted cacao from Delavoye Chocolate Maker on 124th. We have tonka bean, which is one of their key ingredients. We have our whiskey in there. We soak everything in alcohol along with fresh organic ginger, cardamom, and cinnamon. And then I did the math wrong, and I didn't account for how much alcohol would be absorbed by all the ingredients. And so it took me 16 hours to like literally hand squeeze all the chocolate and cinnamon and cardamom to get all the alcohol back out.
These are labors of love, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. I mean, ultimately, though, it comes down to the taste
Yes.
and whether it's fabulous or whether it sucks. And ultimately, we're going to have to taste it. So
Yes.
how about while I do this, would you top me up along with your mug? That's the
just
Anohka,
say-
the Duke. And
Just say when.
Joe's, well, you can go right to the top. And Joe's pushing his mug over as well. I want recognize, this from Cliff in our live chat powered by Park Power. Cliff says, Happy Beer Street. He's talking about it in the capital city here in Edmonton. That's 99th Street. He says Happy Beer Street is such a welcome addition to Edmonton. A whole bunch of breweries there. They've created a community. It's really wonderful. He says, shout out to Jespo's sweatshirt today. I'm repping Ale Architect. He says Ale Architect is the best microbrewery in town. That's a couple of friends of mine that have opened that, and I'm proud to represent them here in lieu of an invitation. You know, we had 3 spots. I knew we had to cover spirits, we had to cover wine, and then Karli and I crossed paths about a week ago at a golf tournament, and I was so compelled by what you're doing, building your brand. I just thought you would be the perfect addition to this roundtable. Karli, we're coming to you in just a quick second, but how can we talk business on Real Talk without talking about the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce and how proud we are to be partnering with them? I want to direct your attention to edmontonchamber.com. A couple of things coming up, including one that I'm really proud to be participating in, and that is their 56th annual golf tournament. If golf is your thing, you got to make sure you're marking your calendar for September 16th. We're going to be going at the Quarry, a fabulous venue for tournaments, a full day of networking, friendly competition, and soaking up that September sunshine. This sells out every single year. You don't want to be left on the outside looking in, so make sure you jump online and book your spot now to the 56th annual Chamber Golf Tournament, September 16th. That's edmontonchamber.com. They've also got their mayoral candidate debate coming up later this summer. We're going to keep you in the loop on that. Make sure you check the website for ticket information and follow them on Instagram at Edmonton Chamber. This the time of year where a lot of successful entrepreneurs, business owners, I'm sure including our guests here today, are taking a look at their business to this point, how they've built their career, and reflecting on retirement goals as well. At North Road Investment Council, they're working with Canadians who have done just that, built those successful businesses, forged those successful careers, but now you want to ensure that your wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. The typical North Road client has at least $2 million in investable assets, oftentimes coming from analytical or detail-driven professions, engineering, architecture, dentistry. If that sounds like you, the team at North Road would love to open up a conversation. You can check out their website, learn more about what makes them different, including their digital risk advisory services. Start that conversation built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment. That's northroadic.com. We're so proud to welcome Peace Hills Insurance to the Real Talk family. This is an insurance company that is doing things differently, and that's what they're very proud of. You can learn about what sets them apart by checking out their website, peacehillsinsurance.com. They're based out of Edmonton, serving all of Western Canada, home, auto, business products, you name it. And they're owned by the Samson Cree Nation, which makes them very unique in the marketplace. Their mission through Wakotowin, that's the Cree word, that represents the interconnectedness of all beings, the mission to be respected and as a national insurer, providing creative and responsive solutions. An insurance company that truly cares. And they show that in a number of different ways through giving back to the communities they serve, funding local projects, And of course, offering policyholders compassionate and dedicated insurance. You can start the journey of learning more about Peace Hills Insurance, wind up saving yourself money, getting better service by visiting their website. That's peacehillsinsurance.com. And we talk a lot about our live chat. I mean, these are the real talkers that are showing up driving these conversations. That's powered every single day by our friends at Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. I want to direct your attention in particular to parkpower.ca/realtalk. This is where you can find exclusive promo codes, discounts on internet, electricity, and natural gas, especially when you're bundling all three services. Again, that's parkpower.ca/realtalk. You're also going to find that Park Power offers some of the lowest rates out there, including a new low promotional power rate of 7.28 cents per kilowatt hour and Alberta's best solar loyalty program. That's the Solar Club. You can find out details on their website, how they're helping Albertans with solar earn more from their systems. Our feature interview today, presented by our friends at Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West with sommelier. I can call you a sommelier, right? Aren't you? Or
Technically,
are you...
a sommelier works in a restaurant, but I have the same training.
But you're like more than a sommelier.
No, it's just a different sector. I'm a wine professional because the sommelier is like at your table pairing with food.
Got that.
Yeah.
Something you could do, but not something you're currently doing.
You know, for ease of, in English, it's easiest just to say sommelier.
It just makes us all feel
sense.
smart when we're using the word.
Yeah.
So with wine professional Joe Gurba, distiller and entrepreneur Gurpreet, Ranu, and of course Karli, Remeika of Clink Beverage Company. Karli, Jillian's joining us in our live chat, and she says, I've got to be really careful, she says, with cocktails and mocktails. She says she gets migraines from additives like artificial colors and flavors, and she says, so I'd be really curious to hear about it and open to trying anything with natural ingredients and processing. I'm looking at your website right now, clinkbeverageco.com, and I see all of the things that you proudly present about how your product is put together. But why don't you take us into it and tell the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. She's right. When you look at a lot of the RTDs and the canned cocktails, they're really high in sugar, and if they're not high in sugar, then they're replacing them with aspartame or stevia. There's lots of different ways. I've even seen monk fruits getting a bit bigger, which isn't as bad, I guess. But I think it was really, really important to us for a couple different reasons. We wanted to keep them less sweet, more like a champagne cocktail would be. So you're not getting this kind of huge sugar bomb like a lot of coolers are. So we keep it, we use the real juice and then just a hair of cane sugars. So our sugars are as low as we can get them without, by using real juice. There's a certain level we can't kind of get under. But I think we've really noticed as we've been going to market that's kind of a point of difference for us, is just having that, a little bit less sugar and not too sweet. And the feedback on that has been great. There's lots of people that don't want aspartame. And, I'm sure there's people that's it's more important for them to have lower calories. And for them that, some of those sweeteners and whatnot are fine. But for us, it was just really important to keep them clean and just kind of that, not too sweet, so you can have a few and you're not getting all that sugar and those extra calories.
You got to kind of pick where you want to be at price point though, right? Like I'm guessing if you're using real juice and you're going gluten sulfite free, you're manufacturing it locally, this is all your production cost is getting a little bit higher every single time. How do you identify who's your target demo, like who is your consumer?
Yeah, I mean, I say if we're probably 25 to 45, 50, predominantly women. I would say we're probably 80% women, and people who want that. They want something clean that they can drink. They don't want all the sugar. If we're talking cocktails and mocktails, I mean, it's funny when you talk about costs going up. People would think that mocktails would be less because you're taking out the booze, but to be able to make a mocktail taste like a proper cocktail, we use a custom Prosecco flavor to get it to taste like the real thing. The mimosa, I would challenge you to try both and see if you can tell the difference.
Well, I did a week ago, and you barely can. But
that costs money, right? It's tough to do.
To Joe's point, where it's like non-alcoholic or de-alkalized wine drives him nuts. You told me something fascinating. In the mocktail space, some feedback you've had from customers, in particular recovering alcoholics, about flavor profiles. It kind of blew my mind. I'd never heard somebody address that before, but I thought there was some interesting insight there.
Yeah, I think that's what, we're learning a lot about it, and it's growing so fast. And we've found that there's mocktails that are meant to just replace a ritual, if you will. So it's just something, it's supposed to be something that's a little bit different, whether that's adaptogen drinks or something that just has a bit of a different flavor from, your typical bubbly, where we're trying to actually get it to taste like a cocktail, like a 1-for-1 change out. And we've been getting some feedback where we've had people that, whether they're recovering alcoholics or, they can't even have that flavor, even if it doesn't matter if it has alcohol or not, even just the taste of it, if it tastes that real, that's, can be very triggering for people. And so we're learning to really make sure that we're talking to people, when we're doing tastings or when we're out there or talking about the mocktails, that they are meant to taste like the cocktail. They're meant to replace it. They're more for that target demographic that just, doesn't like to drink during the week, or, it doesn't sleep well if they have cocktails. And so it's meant for that. But we are noticing that there are some people that won't even have they couldn't have non-alcoholic beer because it would just be
like you can get it as close to the flavor of Prosecco as you can, and for some people it's going to turn them off to the product, which is I don't imagine it's a whole big group of people, but my guess,
we are just noticing that that's something in a conversation we have to address.
Just as an enthusiastic consumer, my guess would be the closer to the original flavor, the better for most people. That would be my guess. By the way, Gurpreet, this the Duke, this what do you call it? The whiskey liqueur. The coffee liqueur is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Is that the?
I'm jealous.
What is that? Yeah, sorry, Karli. I'm not trying to rub it in your face right now. Just wait till we're going to crack your mimosas in a second. It's going to get even worse. But is that the cardamom or something? What's it? There's like that one flavor that I can't quite place. That's excellent.
It's probably the signature ingredient used in a lot of the baking at Duchess is tonka bean. That's kind of the leading character, and then everything else plays, is supporting that. A little bit of ginger to make it feel lively, cardamom and cinnamon.
I was going to say it has kind of almost like a gingerbread feel to it, not quite as rich. What's it like for you? You're like this wine expert. Like when you taste different things, you must be you're like have a beautiful mind as you're like figuring out everything that goes into it.
I won't be too humble. That's true, but that's something anyone can learn. I mean, not everyone has like is blessed with the same palate when they're born. Like there's physiognomical differences, but you can still train, right? Like deploying words, giving categories, speaking out what you taste. And when you were like, it went somewhere other than cardamom, I'm like, there's got to be cardamom. I'm like. Yeah, so it's good to hear there is cardamom. Otherwise, I think my brain is broken. Put me back under an MRI.
I love this. By the way, you're getting a shout out from Dubious in our live chat, who says, Joe Gurba, he says, I feel like this wine guy was a rapper named The Joe like a decade ago. That's how you and I first met, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct.
Hey, I want to, I was kind of joking, but not joking when I say that Karli's out in BC on a trade mission. We've been talking about interprovincial trade barriers. We've been talking about, obviously, wine has been invoked politically so many times over the years. Premier Christy Clark in BC says no to a pipeline. Premier Rachel Notley in Alberta invokes the BC wine ban. And then Donald Trump starts to fuck around with Canada and shimmy shake the trade relationship, and stores across the country pull California wines off the shelves, pull Oregon wines off the shelves. Take us into the kind of the political nature of it all, the business nature of it all. You can't just bring a bunch of wine into Alberta, send some of it to Saskatchewan. You can't bring Ontario wine here without challenges. Can you help us understand all of this?
Wow, yes, where to start? It is a absolute quagmire, and it's been such a roller coaster, honestly, because when this new administration came in, they started a trade war with BC almost out the gate, right? And ironically, it was in response to a lot of complaints from different associations where we were getting undercut with our, British Columbian wines by the shipping into the province, right, directly from the winery to your door. And then the province has had whoever's in charge of these things, I think it's the Red Tape Reduction Committee, they've not done a good job of consulting before making decisions, and they make them it feels rather arbitrary and very quick. Just like that, They sent a letter to everyone in BC. There was a cease and desist, and they could no longer sell their wine into Liquor Connect until they agreed to stop selling it door to door. So for a lot of smaller wineries, it's just not worth it to be in Liquor Connect compared to their door-to-door business.
Liquor Connect is basically through AGLC, which is the provincial kind of governing body for gaming, liquor, cannabis, and the like, right? And so you want to, in theory, help me if I'm wrong on this, but whether you're brewing beer or you're Gurpreet doing this or you're Karli doing the mimosas, you want to have your stuff in Liquor Connect so all the liquor stores in the province, in theory, can order it. It's a distribution network, right?
Yeah, I mean, would it be valuable for like a quick 2-minute crash course on how the business
100%.
works? Okay. So Alberta was the first province to privatize alcohol. It was in 1993. And we have had an extremely successful alcohol market. It'd be very hard for me to live in any other province the way I love wine.
Okay.
Because we are in one of the best markets in the entire world to be an enophile. Like New York, San Francisco, like we're on a level in terms of what you can get here, and the price you can get it for is quite fair. You're not going to do any better except being in Europe itself. So, but also we get wines from places that aren't Europe. Try finding a South African or Australian wine like in Europe. It's not very easy, whereas we have really the whole world at our fingertips. The reason that's possible is because the risk is taken by importers like myself, right? We choose what we want to sell, and if it doesn't sell, we're on the hook for the money, and it's our loss. The government figured, hey, instead of like running stores and trying to decide what we should carry, why don't we let the free market decide what is carried, and we will just collect a tax on it at source. And that's, I think, a very clever way to do things if they're trying to maintain that money. Now, there's a lot of things that we do not tax, so it sometimes feels unfair. If you go somewhere like Quebec, they have very low taxes on wine, so a lot of the wines sold through the SAQ are the same as the wholesale price would be in Alberta, and that's reflected in their kind of more European thinking about wine as a food item. But nevertheless, we've had this very successful system, and there's a lot of like mucking around in there right now, and it's been quite detrimental. So the way it works is we buy wine from a producer, but we cannot sell it to an individual. We have to sell it to a license. Licensees buy wines from importers, but they're allowed to sell it to individuals, right? So it's similar to the system in USA. This keeps it from ever letting a very large company sort of dominate the market from vineyard all the way to customer.
Got it.
Right? So it increases prices because there's more people with their hands in the pot, but it guarantees a wide variety of things are available. So when we buy those things, the way the government makes sure that it gets its money every time is that they must go through the government's distribution center, which is called Liquor Connect. You would think that we would own that as a province, like a utility, but actually it was sold off to DHL forever ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so DHL owns Liquor Connect or Connect Logistics.
Well, it's a contract that comes up for renewal. So they have DHL currently has the contract for Liquor Connect right now. And I think they tend to win every bid every time. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And they do a decent job, but we have the highest storage prices by a long margin in the entire country. Like, I just got a quote from a warehouse in Saskatchewan because everyone's trying to find a way around these ever increasing storage fees, and it was literally 20% of what we pay here. So
not 20% less, 20%
of.
Wow.
And it's profound. Then you don't have a choice either, right? It needs to go through there because every license needs to order through there. So the licenses order their wine through Liquor Connect, right? And pay Liquor Connect, and we don't get paid until they get paid. So it's a way to make sure the government always gets its pound of flesh. And we've been fine with that because this system has worked well. Traditionally, it was about $3 per bottle of wine. It was based on the alcohol and the volume. So the alcohol stayed within a certain range and the volume was a certain amount. There's a flat fee, right? And they've been increasing it. That's gone up at least 20%. Went from $3.91 to $4.96 over the last 4 or 5 years.
So it's driving up price for consumers, obviously. The prices are passed along.
We're not even talking yet about the ad valorem tax that took place April 1st, which is why I reached out to you. I'm like, we got to stop this ad valorem tax.
Okay, I want to get to that in a sec, but you want to jump in here.
I think like, so the reason we see these increasing costs is also like attributable to the fact that, we live in this market where we have access to so much. Like, as a whiskey lover, not just as a whiskey lover, like, you could have access to whiskeys that you can't get in any other jurisdiction. Like, I went to New York for a meeting with some distillery and distributor in New York, and I went to their top whiskey stores, and they don't have the same selection that we do here. I went to Japan on a trade mission. There was Japanese whiskeys that are absolutely incredible, and I couldn't find them in Japan, and I found them in Calgary when I got back. Like, we have access to so much stuff. Now, the problem with that from the Liquor Connect side of things is that creates a whole bunch of logistical hurdles because they have so many SKUs. Right. And then they have so many SKUs, especially like, okay, if you have a high value Barolo, that, what ends up happening is that sits in storage for, you bring in a vintage, it'll take, depending on how much you bring in, it sits there longer than, a $12 like bear. I don't even remember.
Right,
like
but
the
like it's
barefoot
just
wines, right?
it's like it's a more refined, it's a more niche product. It's a
yeah. But it sits there in storage, and so now what happens is it creates this problem where there's like these products that are high in value that sit too long in storage for them, and so what they're trying to do is they're basically trying to reduce the number of SKUs that they have sitting there for a long time, and that's why they've increased the costs. And it's a part of the price that's to be paid for the access to this incredible selection of stuff. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the right way to do it, but they have to manage space. They've got a warehouse with finite space, and they have to manage it somehow in a way that, it doesn't increase the overall costs and doesn't make the contract super inefficient so that DHL doesn't lose a bunch of money as a part of it. But business opportunity here. I have a wine license. I have an excise license. I've also got a warehouse.
So what are you saying? Can you circumvent Liquor Connect?
I think we could.
Karli's nodding her head.
Technically,
they're lucky. They get such a if you're all these local distilleries that you see or the craft breweries, it's really easy for them to do different things because they have these licenses where they can store them. They, the rent we have to pay to Liquor Connect for our product to sit there, it's crazy. There's, and it's really nice for them, those local, if you guys have that license, to be able to avoid all that extra.
It's nice, but I also had to build the building. I've got a mortgage to pay.
Right.
Like, so, yes, okay, I have this advantage, but the costs that go into it. And I can tell you, we're still many years away from actually making any money. So,
but what's the trade-off there, Gurpreet? Does that mean that just so I understand correctly, does that mean that your gins and your whiskeys, by the way, Ben Demon Hunter in our live chat says he is very much looking forward to Anohka's first whiskey. He says, let alone a peated whiskey coming out soon. Which one is he talking about, by the way?
Our first unpeated whiskey will be out November, December, and then our peated whiskeys, like the actual finished whiskey, because whiskey has to age for at least 3 years. So yes, I'm blessed with all the storage space, but I had to build it so that I could store a product that I had to make years ago and can't sell for at least almost another year until a lot of it becomes saleable, and then I have to continue to store this product, and so that's why I have so much storage space. But the whiskey, the peated whiskey, will probably be out in March, April, I think. Next year.
What's that smaller bottle that you brought in? That's an award winner right there. Was that the one that won what did it win? Like World's Best Whiskey or something?
Yeah, we won World's Best New Make and Young
Let me
Spirit.
show this one to the camera. I got to show this, Johnny. Maybe we can punch into it. But the label, let me say here, you say this is not whiskey.
Yeah.
Is that to comply with some of the things, like, for example, if it's not made in Champagne, you can't call it champagne kind of idea?
So it's like,
this is not whiskey?
The CFIA says you can't call something whiskey unless it's been in a barrel for 3 years. That's only been in a barrel for 26 months.
Okay.
So that is not legally whiskey.
But what award did this win? This won a big award.
World's Best.
World's Best.
Yeah.
Right,
so,
okay. I've heard of that.
We took World's Best at the World Whiskey Awards. We also took the highest score in the world at the International Wine and Spirits Competition. So yeah, World's Best in 2 different competitions and 2 pretty respected awards.
That's pretty incredible. So I want to get back to the business side, though. This ad valorem tax that's coming in, the province's Red Tape Reduction Committee is kind of, it seems like they're kind of sneaking it in a little bit. What's the deal, and ultimately, why does that matter to real talkers that are learning about this?
Yeah, this is the thing. If I could change one thing, it's so painful. It only applies to wine. All right. So let's use an analogy to help, because it's rather arcane. But let's imagine that you went to buy your carrots at Costco, all right? The tax on those carrots, let's imagine that food has a flat tax on it like
I
wine
always
does.
buy my carrots at Friesen Brothers. They're
You
way
know
better.
it. That's right.
They're way better.
I'm actually was planning on working Friesen Brothers into this analogy.
I love it. Sorry, Joe. I jumped in.
Yeah, they're great. So there you buy your carrots and there is no additional tax on those carrots, all right? Then say you go and buy your carrots at Friesen Brothers and there's a 5% additional tax on those carrots simply because they're more expensive. And then say you go to buy your carrots in the organic section at Friesen Brothers. Now there is a 10% tax, okay? This is not just a percentage that on its own is going to naturally get higher as the price goes up. The price itself is increasing the percentage you pay, right? So then you've got 10% tax on your organic carrots. Now imagine you go to the old Strathcona Farmers Market and you get your carrots there. For some reason now, because they're more expensive, you're gonna have to pay a 15% tax. That's just money that you have to give the government because of what you choose to spend your money on. We have had a flat tax, whether you're buying a bottle of cheap Prosecco or top-end champagne, you are paying the exact same amount of tax to the government for the privilege of enjoying these products, right? But now the government believes that it deserves to have an ever-increasing rate of tax according to how nice the wine is or how expensive, rather, the wine is.
It's kind of like a luxury tax, right?
Yes, and it's just absolutely absurd and classist in a weird, ironic way, because it just assumes that it parades as a progressive tax. Parade is the wrong word because no one knows it exists. It came into effect April 1st and no one even knows. It's not a progressive tax. It's a regressive tax because it just assumes that people who have less money only buy cheap things, which isn't true. In fact, when you have less money and you shell out for a $100 bottle of wine, it means that much more to you. Like, why should you be giving the government more money to be able to drink it? So the way it works is $15 wholesale to $20 wholesale, 5% extra tax, okay? This is on top of the flat taxes that have already been creeping up, duties, etc. Then from $20 to $25, 10% extra tax. And then from 25 and up wholesale, that is a 15% extra tax, right? And this was enacted like within 30 days of having been announced. So wine is already on the water. It would have changed my buying decisions because of the way the prices change. And everyone down, like, the thing to understand is that your favorite restaurants, the ones that you go to for your anniversaries, for your birthdays, retirement parties, a huge part of how they stay open, because these are almost like acts of charity, these restaurants. Like, they are not super profitable businesses. They leave it all on the plate. Like, they're making money off wine. And this has been the case forever, like since the word restaurant was a thing, like became a thing, is that wine is what pays the bills, it's what keeps the lights on, it's what people are willing to pay some more for. But if at the end of your dining experience, you look at your bill and it's that much higher, it's just, you become less likely to go out and the jobs go with it. There's 80,000 people working in hospitality. It's a huge driver of why we have such an incredible food and drink scene in Alberta. We swing so far above our weight. And why? Because we have incredible wine to support our incredible food. It's at least a part of it, right? We have to recognize that. And the idea that we can just sneak these extra taxes in and make it look like it's the boutique stores and the restaurants and the importers who are like jacking prices up on you, or it's somehow inflation, it's a hidden tax. It just does not seem fair.
I appreciate you laying that out. It's kind of like interesting where you talk about that as unique to wine, or at least the specific tax unique to wine. In just a second, Gurpreet, Karli, I want to ask you maybe about a unique challenge facing your specific industry, your specific company, how you're overcoming that. And then I want to wrap by asking about something you're particularly excited about, something really cool that's happening. I want to make sure that we cover ground as well on this interprovincial trade barrier, because I think people reference liquor almost more than anything else. When talking about it. The average citizen, that's how they best understand it. More with Joe, Gurpreet, and Karli in just a quick second. I cannot talk to you about the finest. I cannot talk to you about quality without talking to you about the Helm clothing. This is where I've been going personally as a customer for a long time. Whether I'm hosting an event, maybe it's a party here in the Real Talk studio, whatever's going on, I go see Chad and the team at the Helm. They know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for new, crisp denim. I'm looking for a fabulous stark white dress shirt, and I'm looking for a jacket that will wow, and they've delivered every single time. Founded in Edmonton, the Helm is a contemporary 3-story retail experience in Edmonton's downtown core, and I'm using that word on purpose. It is a retail experience. Yes, you can go to their website. Yes, you can check it out, but I recommend you go in and see the team. It is a stunning location, and they focus on custom suits and luxury casual wear. So if you're into brands, Ralph Lauren, Zegna, Brunello Cucinelli, they've got it all there. They're going to find you the perfect fit, and then they're going to get even closer to perfection from there. Their tailors are the best in the business. Nobody understands luxury casual menswear quite like the Helm. It's always worth a visit. Go in, kick some tires, take your time, explore something new, and don't be afraid to push your own boundaries a little bit. I like to trust these guys. They say, what's going to look good on me? Sometimes I go, I don't know if I can pull that off. And then I walk into a room and someone says something and I go, oh, God bless the Helm. Again, see them 3 stories downtown Edmonton or online at thehelmclothing.com. If you're looking for somewhere to put your new custom suits, your new luxury casual wear, what about a custom closet or another storage solution by California Closets of Canada? This is a proudly Alberta-owned and operating business. All of their installations manufactured right here in our home province. Whether you're looking for that dream walk-in closet, the one you've designed in your mind, you know exactly what you want in there. Or maybe you're sick and tired of not being able to find your drill, your spare tires, your garden hose, and you desperately need a garage storage system. Laundry rooms, mud rooms, boot rooms, home offices, you name it, they do it. Custom designed to fit your space and your budget. Are you sitting there going, I could never afford California Closets? Think again. You can learn more about their different levels at californiaclosets.ca, starting with practical simplicity. Working all the way up to luxury refined. Everything they install is guaranteed for life. You can request your free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. As the sun pounds down, at least for another few months, Kubi renewable energy customers are enjoying their savings. And if you're thinking about going solar, it's never been more doable. Between the Canada Greener Homes Loan and programs like that Clean Energy Improvement Program, you don't have to shell out the full cost up front, like Gurpreet has done with his distillery. No. You can get started. You can turn your roof or any extra space into something that actually saves you money long term, and the Kubi team is there to walk you through every single step. It's kubi.ca, Kuby.ca. You can request a free solar quote, cut your energy bills, make a move toward a cleaner, brighter future. Again, that's kuby.ca/solar. And Joe's already done a wonderful job of romancing the carrots at Friesen Brothers. They're sourcing all of their produce as close to home as possible. And then there's everything they're making in store. It is, of course, hatch chili season right now. These are these fabulous kind of subtle, smoky, buttery chilies out of New Mexico. They have a growing season. They're only available for a limited time, and they're doing marvelous work, including a roasted garlic and hatch chili Gouda cheese right now at Friesen Brothers for a limited time. You can find them online at friesen.com if you want to check out their Family Essentials flyer. We love this. Recipes and, of course, affordable options for your family. You don't want to cut corners on quality. When you're getting the family around the dinner table, Friesen Brothers has always been focused on family, proudly celebrating their 70th anniversary. Catch them online at friesen.com. So we're talking about these interprovincial trade barriers and the challenges in doing business, between Alberta and Saskatchewan or Ontario and BC or what have you. Gurpreet, you're nodding, but has this proven itself to be a significant challenge as you've forged through in your business's first 10 years?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I don't know if it's an interprovincial trade barrier so much as just how insanely heavily things are taxed in other jurisdictions. Like it doesn't even make sense to try to go to BC because what they do is they basically take your landed cost of your product once it lands in BC, and I'm sure you're discovering this now, Karli. They take your landed cost. So after you've paid for shipping, after you've paid the federal government tax, after you've paid for your product, the bottles, everything. By the way, we use 100% recycled glass bottles, import them from Italy, so those aren't cheap.
Really?
Yeah. So
the bottles are beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, but 100% recycled glass, it's important to us. But so after I pay for all of this stuff, it lands in BC. They add, I think for spirits, is 120% tax on top of it. on top of the landed cost. Okay. Then on top of that, storage, warehousing, all the rest of it. And so by the time, my product gets on the shelf in BC, let's pretend that there are no interprovincial trade barriers. Let's pretend that there aren't any. And let's say they say, okay, Anohka, hey, bring your stuff here. My bottle of gin ends up at like $90 retail as a result of that. Because I have to account for how much I'm going to pay in storage and all the rest of it. And they charge a tax on a tax. In Ontario, it's 140%.
So are you saying if your bottle is $100 wholesale, it's being taxed $140 on top of that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And that's on top of like the transportation cost and the excise tax and everything else. And so I think it's actually 125%, in BC, and 140% in Ontario. And so, it just, you look at the market size in BC, right? And you're like, all right, there's a few million people here. How much of my gin are they actually going to be able to drink? And then I look at Japan, right? And so we actually export to Japan. So our gin, our Tempest Dry gin is available in Japan. And why did we decide to go to that market? Because Tokyo by itself is almost the population of Canada, right? And so you have an actual market where, if I were to spend the amount of time and energy that I spent in that market, the returns could be significantly higher versus going to BC and selling to less people than Metro Los Angeles.
And Gurpreet, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this like a legacy of when most of the booze sold was a sort of workaday booze, and the regimen was created at a time with this kind of direct taxation idea at a certain rate, and it really predates the explosion of quality products that require, they're made in small amounts, require a lot of labor. And so when it comes in at a landed price that much higher, 120% cannot be stomached like it could for Russian Prince or whatever.
Exactly. So BC Liquor and LCBO were both kind of designed, like the LCBO by itself. So the Liquor Control Board of Ontario is the single largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. When they make a rule or a decision, the entire industry, whether it's based out of France with LVMH or based out of Italy with Campari, like these companies respond to what the LCBO decides. And so the LCBO is this huge powerhouse, and so they have the ability to put terms on their imports that really only the big guys can respond to. Like, for example, if you were to sell into Ontario, they want you to present them with a marketing budget that you're going to spend this many dollars on marketing. They expect you to sell through at a certain rate. So on top of the 140% tax, they then say, all right, you have this many months to sell this much product. If you sell this much product this quickly, we will keep you on the shelf, because they say our shelf space is valuable. If you don't, guess what? We then get to discount your product at whatever rate we decide, just to get it off our shelves, because we want to get rid of it.
Right.
And then whatever money we lose because we discounted it at our chosen rate, you got to pay us for that. And so like they could like discount it like 70%, get it off their shelves, and then send me a bill for that. And so like that's not an interprovincial trade barrier. That's just them being used to dealing with Diageo and Campari, LVMH, Pernod Ricard, and Brown Forman, and these large groups that can their production cost for a bottle of whiskey is like $2, right? Uh-huh. And so they can sell that whiskey into that market very cheaply. They can move high volume because they have brand recognition and all that marketing capital that they've invested, decades in, and so they're able to actually be successful in those markets. But when you have this government-controlled board, and I understand it because, it sucks that I can't get my stuff. Well, that I don't even want to go to Ontario because of these things. But I understand. Like their purpose is to generate revenue for the Ontario government, right? And so they do, and they do that very, very well.
And I'm going to guess that the Ontario government is not particularly compelled to shake up that model if it's a cash cow for them.
Exactly.
So it sounds to me like a little bit of lip service. And again, we're talking about eliminating or eradicating interprovincial trade barriers. It's about a whole lot more than booze, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to dig in, and we have experts on the show all the time, and chambers of commerce and business lobby groups, and everybody's saying that the government's got to eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. The idea is to keep more in Canada, explore other export markets and the like. But I want to sometimes get into the brass tacks on like what has to happen or how likely is that to happen. And it sounds to me like it's not that likely to happen.
No, unless the Ontario government is willing to completely overhaul their system. But they make they make their money on the high volume SKUs because they get to charge 140% on that.
That's wild.
And they on the landed cost, and so they make this tremendous amount of money on these things. But the only people that can really afford to produce a product at that price point where it'll actually retail at a reasonable price are the large producers. And so it basically excludes, you're not going to be able to buy that Barolo in Ontario. No way. Right.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I doubt you can. And that's why
if you could, it would be much more expensive.
What would that Barolo sell for in Alberta approximately?
About 115, 120 retail.
Okay, and
I'm trying to factor in the new tax that came in April 1st. So all my prices are messed up.
So like 120. So in a restaurant, it would be like 220 probably. Something like that.
Depending on the restaurant, different markups for different restaurants.
Okay.
But
So Karli, it's sounding to me like I noticed when Gurpreet was talking about that you're compelled to provide an additional marketing budget. You were like nodding your head. It sounds to me like as a startup or as a relatively small player with a quality product nonetheless. But it sounds to me like this would be almost prohibitive to even consider entering some markets. How are you picking your spots?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to. We're just learning a bit about it now, and like as fresh as 3 weeks ago, we kind of got our ability to sell into BC, and we essentially have to operate at a loss until we can get to such a size that you can maybe shrink your margins a bit. But the way, and it's very similar to what he was talking about too, with you have to prove yourself. So we have to not only are there the markups that are, 124%, I think we calculated on ours, but we have to ship from Liquor Connect into BC and then ship it out through LDB until we can prove ourselves. You have to have so many cases you sell a week for X amount of time. So call it 6 months. You have to prove that you can sell 25 cases a week consistently. And once you hit that, then they say, okay, now you can ship directly to LDB, to their version of Liquor Connect in BC. And if you don't upkeep that, same type of thing, then that's it, you're delisted and out you go. But I was looking yesterday on the shelf just trying to compare prices, and I know there's a Alberta product that's made in the same place in Airdrie that we are, and a 4-pack here of their stuff is whatever, call it $14.99, and he's $19.99 on the shelf. But you look at everything else around it that's made in BC, and they're $12.99, $13.99. Like, and so it makes us sick to our stomach that we have to do it. But for people to try it in BC, it's gonna be $20 a 4-pack.
Yeah,
and it's impossible, and that's at a loss. Like, we're still losing money. Thank goodness we've got the mocktails, which is, I think, makes sense for us because I think we can make up some of that. But if you're just someone who wants to get into the rest of Canada, it's really, really tough.
I appreciate just kind of the three of you laying out this landscaping and helping us, like, as consumers to better understand it. I see Adam's in the chat. He says protectionism at its finest. I happen to know. I hope Adam doesn't mind being exposed beyond his chat alias. He's a co-owner of Analog Brewing, and I want to give them a shout out. They're doing awesome work here in Edmonton. You can check out, I'm showing their website right now, analogbrewing.ca. Wonderful storytelling with their brand, and I think that a big part of all of this, I mean, Joe, you were romancing your wines right out of the gates, is like a huge part of this is storytelling. I want to wrap with this. I want to ask the three of you about something that you're particularly excited about, something you're optimistic about, something that's happening that you think that the general public would be interested to know. Karli, we'll start with you, something either happening with your business or in the industry that gives you optimism or that you're jazzed about.
Well, I think the mocktails are really cool. I think that I like to drink. I don't I prefer it. I would more take something with alcohol over mocktails. But I think that space and how creative people are getting in that space is going to be really cool, and it does just allow people to have different options. And so I think it'd be really fun to see where that goes and allow us to kind of play in that spot. So I think, you're seeing it walking through liquor stores. Those sections are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I tend to agree that I don't know about the wines as much. I think that's a lot tougher, but you're seeing some great canned products, and so I'm really excited about our mocktails and where that can lead us. And I think we'll play on trying to get it to taste as as much like its alcoholic counterparts as we can, and see how that grows.
Yeah, very cool. I think it's a big market. Obviously, I'm the king of stating the obvious, and that's one of them. Gurpreet, we heard a little bit about the whiskeys that are coming up in the next few months. What's something else that you're particularly excited about?
We're working on another project right now. I can't.
Come
on.
on.
I had to sign an NDA, so I can't give you some details. But what I can say is that we have a new whiskey project coming out, and what it is that a lot of my whiskey isn't 3 years old yet. Actually, most of it isn't 3 years old yet. Only 7 barrels out of like over 350 are 3 years old. And so we have a bunch of this whiskey that's not quite 3 years old, but Canada has this, they call it the 1/11th rule, where you can actually blend, so long as your whiskey's been aged at least 2 years, you can blend it into an older whiskey, and it'll retain the older whiskey's age statement so long as you don't go over the 1/11th. So you can, if you have 10 parts whiskey that's 10 years old and you add 1 part out of 11 that is even below 3, you can still call it a 10-year-old whiskey. And so we've got access to a bunch of 10-year-old whiskey made here in the province that's really quite delightful. But it's kind of like this canvas, because Canadian whiskey is light, right? It doesn't have all the bones, and so a little bit of young malt whiskey going into that really lifts that whiskey up. And so we're using, and we openly advertise the fact that we're using the 1/11th rule. So it'll be a 10-year-old whiskey with a bunch of 2-year-old whiskey in it, but it's so good, and so we're really excited. And the nice thing about that is because we're using mass-produced Alberta whiskey, we can hit a lower price point.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to be launching that product in the next couple of months here.
We haven't even talked about your absolutely stunning facility. By the way, I'll give a shout out to our friends at Edify. Beautiful feature. People can check it out. Just Google Edify and Anohka, the piece of form and function, the devil's in the details. You describe how you have to spend like $1,000 to rent a scissor lift to dust your ceiling fans. Yeah. But the architecture and what you pulled off on your 110-acre farm is absolutely beautiful, Gurpreet. Joe, or did you want to say something? Yeah, absolutely.
I forgot to mention, I don't know how I forgot to mention this, but also like the reason that we are 20 minutes west of the city is that we grow our own barley. And so, the way, I didn't realize how crazy farming is and how stressful it can be. Like the fact that it's raining right now is killing all of my neighbors, because that means that they can't get in the field and they can't harvest right now, which is really quite difficult. Even our local beekeepers can't get into the fields to empty their hives right now, so it's really quite challenging. But every year we end up with a different crop, and so we grew barley. It's a 3-year rotation, so we grew barley in 2021, we grew it in 2024. Wildly different crops, wildly different protein levels, wildly different malting characteristics, because 2021 was a drought year, 2024 was actually quite nice, and so we have wildly different whiskey from each one of those. So eventually I'll have something akin to a vintage whiskey, which will, you'll be able to taste the weather of that year, right? Whether we had a wet spring or a dry spring, and it's shocking how much that changes the whiskey.
That's cool though. That happens too with wine, doesn't it? Like that's I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
There's like there's personalities in the product,
exactly,
which is phenomenal. And of course, as compelling storytellers like the three of you are, it's something you can capitalize on. Joe, something you're inspired by, something you're optimistic about. Last word to you.
Oh man, in wine, it's a constant churn of things to be excited about. I'm really excited about what you're doing with Anohka. That's amazing. That is what I love about wine, is that it's really from the soil all the way to the glass. A very thoughtful, united process, a collaboration with nature. I would say with wine, I'm really excited about Bordeaux right now. Bordeaux has been a bit of a whipping boy for the last 10, 20 years. And I feel like it's taken its licks and it's coming back now. It's the perennial fine wine region. It's the original fine wine region. Probably my favorite reds in the world come from Bordeaux, which is not in vogue to say. But I feel like a new generation is ready to meet Bordeaux. I'm really going to bat for it for people.
Why is it taking its lumps?
Age.
It's kind of fallen out of favor. Why do you think?
It's been seen as quite stuffy, and it's always been a very mercantile place. Like, it was born from mercantilism. It is like the idea of fine wine was born there because it was for a market that wasn't there. It was for England more than anything. So England in many ways can be looked to as the progenitor of fine wine as we know it, because they couldn't grow it anymore when the Little Ice Age started. And I think they have like a Freudian problem there. They lust for the days when they could grow wine, and they've only started growing it again recently with the changing climate. How much time do I have? I'm probably running low on time.
No, as much as you want. No,
Okay.
we're hanging out. That's the whole purpose of this episode.
Well, England was the first place to be like, I want to know what in the modern era, to be like, I want to know where that came from, which village, and then beyond that, like which farm, like which chateau, to be like which vintage. That's a good vintage, that's a bad vintage, etc. And so Bordeaux has a long, very mercantile history, right? They even have a guild that's still in place from the Middle Ages for how the wine gets brokered. So you buy a wine from a chateau anywhere else, and you're usually dealing with that chateau directly, but there it's sold through a broker to a merchant, and you buy it from the merchant. And in some ways, that's actually been kind of protective, because it means that like there's no marketing needs for some of these petits chateaux, because they have a merchant that's going to buy all the wine. So they just like I have chateaux I work with that don't have websites, right?
They get to focus.
Speak English. Yeah, they're focused on making their wine.
I love that, actually.
They have a customer for it, right? The merchant is focused on selling it. And so I feel like Bordeaux needs someone to be its champion. We've really gotten obsessed with terroir, which is great. And we've kind of taken a shit all over process, which means like for some reason Champagne gets a pass. It's extremely process oriented. Sherry gets a pass. It's extremely process oriented. But the fact that Bordeaux is more process oriented than say Burgundy seems to make it like a whipping boy now. But actually the houses have a style they pursue. The grapes have changed many times over centuries based on phylloxera or big frosts that come and kill all the Malbec, so it gets replaced with Merlot. It's just a very living, vibrant, exciting place where people are starting to experiment. Like this is a pet nat from Bordeaux. Like it doesn't have a chateau on it. Like, and also there's a lot of really great wines that look really unassuming. They've got some boring looking chateau on the picture, a name you can't pronounce, but in the bottle, like they're delivering on value like crazy. Outside of those top 200 chateaux that are super expensive, like there's so much value. You know,
you and I ran into each other. I think it was, I don't know, Joe, it was about a year and a half ago, something like that. And I was on my way to an event. Don't remember what it was. Ran into you just by happenstance on the wine trail. On the wine trail, and we had an experience just like this, like standing in the aisle. And I think I was probably. I don't know. I must have been looking at something from Australia, and you ushered me over to the French wines.
Oh, Australia's making really good wine. That's my second
thing.
It's
not a shot at Australia, but but it was like, we talked about what my price point was, whatever, and you recommended these two bottles, and I knocked everybody's socks off.
Oh, good.
With those bottles, as you promised I would.
Good.
And I've been, but the design of them was classic and elegant, but not one that would jump off the shelf. I mean, I was so grateful you provided it, and I think it's obvious that you have a passion here. All three of you, and I'm grateful for it. We wanted to, this is a different show for us. We didn't talk a lot about politics. We didn't talk about news. Nobody's particularly angry in the live chat, which is weirding me out a little. It's weirding me out a little bit. Don't worry, Max Fawcett's on tomorrow. Everybody will be pissed off again.
There'll be nothing on the flamethrower about this. Like, I just hope people write their MLA, because most MLAs are like focused on big stuff. This is a huge revenue section, booze, right? But you've heard a lot here about what's going on in booze. Write to your MLA, like, especially for me, write for that ad valorem tax. All right, I'm not going to sell less wine. I'm good at selling wine. I buy a lot of wine, and I don't think the government deserves to get a bunch more of my money just because I choose to drink better wine.
Yeah, especially in a province where the government prides itself on red tape reduction and being smaller and leaner and more efficient. This is kind of the opposite of that. That's Joe Gurba, who's joining us as the wine importer for Vino al Vino. We've been hanging out with Gurpreet Ranu, who is the owner and master distiller at Anohka Distillery, and kind enough to wake up very early Pacific time to join us from North Vancouver. A shout out to our wonderful friend Karli Remeika, who's the owner, the co-founder of the Alberta-based Clink Beverage company. Thanks to the three of you for this. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Best of luck out in BC, Karli. Hope to see that on the shelves everywhere. And to Real Talkers, we always want to know what you think about what you've just heard. I bet you there's going to be some people that are checking out their very first episode of Real Talk. Maybe it was the subject matter that brought you here. Let us know what you think. And as Joe mentioned, the Flamethrower, our tradition, every single week, it's on Fridays, our final episode of the week, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. If you're all fired up about something you've heard, send us an email to talk at ryanjesperson.com. As we wrap our show today, I do want to let you know, coming up on our next episode, it's Max Fawcett, lead columnist for Canada's National Observer. This will be just moments ahead of Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump's meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. How's that going to go? As we wrap, I want to plant this seed with you. If you're planning your estate, you got a few extra bucks in your pocket. Remember, UCAN Youth Services. We're shining a light on them all year round at ucan.ca. Cheers, everybody.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.